The Winchester 1897 trembles in Jake McNiece's grip as dawn breaks grey over the Norman hedgerows, June 1944. The pump-action shotgun, requisitioned from a dead paratrooper 3 days ago, feels heavier than any TNT satchel he's ever carried. Through the morning fog, German voices echo from the bombed-out farmhouse where his captured squad waits for execution. The mission was supposed to be simple: destroy the Crossroads Bridge, delay the Panzer advance, regroup with Easy Company. Instead, McNiece landed 2 miles off target in a flooded pasture, watched half his demolition team get pinned down by MG-42 fire, and spent 18 hours crawling through hedgerows, only to find his men being herded into a makeshift prison camp by SS troopers who clearly have no intention of following Geneva Convention protocols. From his crater 80 yards away, McNiece counts 12 Germans, 2 machine gun nests, and a Kübelwagen parked beside the barn. His men, Ragsman, Peeping Tom, Chuck Plowder, kneel in the mud with hands zip-tied behind their backs. An SS officer paces between them, barking questions about Allied positions, while a subordinate loads fresh ammunition into a Schmeisser. The Winchester holds 6 shells of double-aught buckshot, devastating at close range, useless beyond 50 yards. The mathematics are brutal. 6 shells, 12 enemies, limited reload time. But McNiece has never put much stock in mathematics when his men's lives hang in the balance. Lieutenant Morrison's voice echoes in his memory from 3 days ago. Don't play hero, McNasty. Blow the bridge, fall back, wait for reinforcement. That's an order. But orders never accounted for scattered drops, misdirected supplies, or the way pump-action fire sounds like thunder in enclosed spaces. The Germans expect rifle fire, careful aimed shots from distance. They're not prepared for a madman with a trench gun charging straight into their midst. McNiece chambers around, feeling the smooth brass slide home. The plan forms itself as he watches: circle north through the drainage ditch, use the morning fog for concealment, reach the collapsed stone wall, then sprint the final 40 yards with the Winchester blazing. From the barn, someone laughs, cruel, casual laughter that makes McNiece's jaw clench. These aren't regular Wehrmacht troops showing battlefield respect for captured paratroopers. These are executioners enjoying their work, men who killed at least 6 paratroopers during the initial capture. The fog thickens as McNiece begins his low crawl through the ditch, elbows scraping against broken stones and barbed wire. The Winchester's barrel catches on a twisted fence post, and he pauses to work it free, listening to German conversation drift across the Norman countryside. The SS officer is consulting his watch, apparently on a schedule. Through the mist, McNiece catches sight of Ragsman's bloodied face, still defiant despite the zip ties and mud. The kid from Tennessee who always asked too many questions about charge placement, who never quite trusted McNiece's improvised demolitions until he saw bridges drop exactly where predicted. 50 yards from the barn, McNiece reaches the stone wall and peers over the crumbling edge. 2 guards flank the kneeling Americans, while the others maintain perimeter security. The Kübelwagen's engine idles, probably waiting to transport bodies. These Germans are experienced, confident, and completely unprepared for what's about to happen. McNiece takes 3 deep breaths, feels his heart hammering against his ribs, and vaults over the wall. If stories like this make you imagine what you'd do under fire, tell us in the comments how you think you'd react in this situation. And stay with us for the next chapters. The sprint across open Norman pasture lasts forever and no time at all. Boots pounding through puddles, breath burning in his lungs, the Winchester held low and ready. A German sentry turns, opens his mouth to shout warning, and McNiece fires his first shell from 30 yards. The buckshot takes the man center mass, spinning him sideways into the barn wall. The thunderous boom echoes across the farmyard like artillery. Chaos erupts instantly. Germans dive for cover, shout contradictory orders, scramble for weapons. McNiece works the pump action, chambers his second round, fires at the machine gun nest. The spread catches two men, sending them sprawling behind their position. Third shell into the group near the Kübelwagen. Fourth shell through the barn's open doorway, forcing guards away from the prisoners. McNiece reaches the barn wall with two shells remaining, his ears ringing from the shotgun blasts. German voices inside, confused and panicked. The SS officer screaming for organization, for someone to return fire effectively. But the Winchester has transformed the tactical situation completely. Instead of controlled execution, the Germans face close-quarters combat against an enemy who specializes in demolition work and improvised violence. Inside the barn, Ragsman looks up from where he kneels in the straw, blood on his face but alive. "McNasty, you crazy bastard. Thought we were dead for sure." McNiece cuts the zip ties with his combat knife, hands shaking from adrenaline. "Not today. Grab their weapons, check the ammo. We've got maybe 5 minutes before reinforcements show up. The final assault happens fast." McNiece kicks through the barn door, fires his fifth shell at point-blank range into an SS trooper raising a Schmeisser. The sixth shell drops the officer as he fumbles for his sidearm. Then it's hand-to-hand fighting with rifle butts and entrenching tools, while the remaining Germans try to reorganize outside. Peeping Tom staggers to his feet, working feeling back into his wrists. "How'd you know where to find us?" "Followed the smoke from their cook fires," McNiece says, reloading the Winchester with shells stripped from German pouches. "Plus, you idiots are loud enough to wake the dead." Chuck Plowder manages a weak grin, despite the swelling around his left eye. "What's the plan now, Sergeant?" "Back to the bridge." McNiece checks his watch. 0647 hours. The bridge mission feels like another war now, overshadowed by 18 hours of cat and mouse through Norman hedgerows and the immediate problem of German search patrols converging on their position. First, we get clear of this mess. Bridge can wait until we're not running for our lives. The escape through the hedgerows takes 2 hours, carrying one wounded man and dodging German search patrols. McNiece leads them back through drainage ditches and cow pastures, the empty Winchester slung across his back like a talisman. Behind them, engines growl and voices shout, but the morning fog provides cover, and the bocage terrain favors small groups who know how to move quietly. When they finally reach the Allied checkpoint near Sainte-Mère-Église, the captain taking their report stares at McNiece with something between admiration and disbelief. "You assaulted a reinforced position with a shotgun? Alone?" McNiece shrugs, too exhausted for explanations. "Sometimes you use what works. Winchester's got stopping power at close range. Germans weren't expecting it." The captain makes notes on his clipboard, glancing repeatedly at the muddy, blood-stained paratroopers. "What about the bridge mission?" "Bridge is still there," McNiece says quietly. "But my men are here. Sometimes that's what matters most." Later, cleaning the shotgun by lamplight in a bombed-out church near Sainte-Mère-Église, McNiece reflects on how weapons shape tactics and tactics shape survival. The Winchester 1897 wasn't designed for European warfare. It was a hunting weapon, a tool for close-range work in American forests. But war has a way of proving that innovation and desperation can transform any tool into a tactical advantage. The other members of the Filthy 13 gather around as McNiece reassembles the Winchester, sliding shells into the magazine tube. They know that tomorrow will bring another mission, another bridge to destroy or position to assault. But tonight, they're alive because their sergeant understands that sometimes the best tactics involve throwing away the textbook and trusting in violence, timing, and the devastating effectiveness of buckshot in close quarters. "McNasty saved our asses," Ragsman tells the others, his Tennessee drawl thick with exhaustion. "Came through that fog like something out of a nightmare. Germans never knew what hit them." Peeping Tom nods, flexing his wrists where the zip ties cut circulation. "Thought for sure we were goners. That SS officer kept asking about artillery positions, troop movements. When we wouldn't talk, he started talking about making examples." Chuck Plowder stares into the gutted altar of the Norman church, candlelight flickering across his bruised face. "They shot Henderson and Martinez right in front of us. Just lined them up against the barn wall and pulled the trigger. said it was to encourage our cooperation. The words hang heavy in the smoky air. McNiece continues cleaning the Winchester's action, but his hands pause at the mention of lost men. Henderson from Kansas, always complaining about sea rations. Martinez, who spoke 3 languages and could talk his way past any checkpoint. Good paratroopers who landed in the wrong field at the wrong time. Lieutenant Morrison appears in the church doorway, his uniform muddy from a day spent coordinating scattered units across the Norman bocage. Sergeant McNiece, need to debrief your action this morning. McNiece sets down the shotgun and follows Morrison to a corner of the church where maps spread across an improvised table. Radio-static crackles from the corner where a communications team monitors traffic from other units. The bridge, Morrison says without preamble. Division wants to know why it's still standing. My men were captured, sir. Had to prioritize. Your orders were specific, McNiece. Blow the bridge, delay enemy armor, fall back to rally point. Nothing about rescue missions. McNiece studies the map, noting positions marked with grease pencil. Other units report mixed success. Some bridges destroyed, others still in German hands. Paratroopers scattered across 20 square miles of Norman countryside. Sometimes the situation changes, sir. Sometimes you have to improvise. Morrison's expression softens slightly. Look, McNasty, I understand, but division is breathing down my neck about that bridge. Intelligence reports German armor massing for a counterattack. That crossing could be critical. Give me fresh charges and 6 hours, McNiece says. I'll take care of the bridge. With what? Your demolition gear went down with the equipment bundles. Half your TNT is scattered across French farmland. McNiece taps the Winchester leaning against the church wall. Sometimes you make do with what you have. The radio crackles with reports from other units. Bridges blown at Isigny, German counterattack repulsed near Carrington, scattered paratroopers still making their way to rally points. The Norman campaign continues its chaotic rhythm of improvisation and adaptation. Small unit actions that will later be condensed into clean arrows on staff maps. There's something else, Morrison says quietly. That SS unit you hit this morning, they were part of a larger sweep looking for scattered paratroopers. Intelligence thinks they've captured more of our people. McNiece looks up from the map, understanding dawning. How many more? At least a dozen, maybe 20. Scattered across 3 or 4 positions like the one you hit. The weight settles on McNiece's shoulders like a heavy pack. More men captured, more executions planned, more impossible choices between following orders and following conscience. Would you follow the orders exactly, or trust what your own eyes and instincts tell you in a moment like this? Comment which path you'd take, and share this episode with someone who loves real human stories from history. The second barn sits 2 miles deeper in the Norman bocage, surrounded by flooded fields that gleam silver under the quarter moon. McNiece crouches in a drainage ditch with 5 volunteers from the Filthy 13, watching German sentries pace between the buildings. Intelligence was right. At least 15 captured paratroopers kneel in the farmyard while SS troopers prepare for another dawn execution. But this time, McNiece carries more than the Winchester. Scrounged from supply dumps and abandoned equipment, his makeshift arsenal includes 4 grenades, 2 blocks of TNT with improvised fuses, and enough ammunition to make the shotgun sing its deadly song for more than 6 rounds. Same as before, Ragsman whispers, checking his captured Schmeisser. Not quite, McNiece replies, studying the layout. This time we go in hard and fast. No lone wolf heroics. The plan unfolds quickly. Peeping Tom and Chuck Plowder circle north to take out the machine gun nest. Ragsman and 2 others create diversion from the east, while McNiece approaches from the south with the Winchester and TNT. Simultaneous assault, maximum shock, extract prisoners before German reinforcements arrive. At 03:30 hours, McNiece lights the first improvised fuse and hurls the TNT block toward the German command post. The explosion shatters the Norman night, sending timber and bodies flying. Before the echoes fade, the Winchester roars from 30 yards, buckshot raking the confused sentries. This time the assault feels different. Instead of desperate improvisation, it's controlled violence with clear objectives. McNiece works the pump action methodically, advancing on the barn, while his men pour fire into German positions from multiple angles. The SS troops, caught between explosions and automatic weapons fire, struggle to organize effective resistance. Inside the barn, captured paratroopers flatten against the walls as bullets snap overhead. McNiece kicks through the door, fires 2 rounds into German guards, then begins cutting zip ties with mechanical efficiency. "Jesus, Sergeant," one prisoner gasps. "Thought we were finished for sure." "Not on my watch," McNiece replies, reloading the Winchester. "Can you move?" The extraction takes 20 minutes of running firefights through Norman hedgerows. German voices shout in the darkness, engines rev to life, but the filthy 13 know this terrain now. They lead 18 rescued paratroopers through drainage ditches and cowpaths, using the bocage like a fortress of earth and stone. By dawn, they reach another Allied checkpoint, this one manned by regular infantry, who stare in amazement at the muddy procession of rescued men. The captain in charge shakes his head as he counts heads and takes names. "Sergeant McNiece, division is going to want a full report on this action." "Yes, sir. But first, about that bridge mission." The captain consults his map. "Bridge? Oh, that one. Actually, enemy armor took a different route, bypassed that crossing entirely. Turns out it wasn't as critical as we thought." McNiece feels something cold settle in his stomach. All the urgency, all the pressure to follow orders exactly, and the bridge mission turned out to be irrelevant. Meanwhile, 33 paratroopers are alive because he chose to trust his instincts over his orders. "Sergeant," the captain continues, "Division wants to know how you're pulling off these rescue operations. They're calling it irregular tactics, but the results speak for themselves." McNiece shoulders the Winchester, feeling its familiar weight. "Sometimes irregular problems require irregular solutions, sir. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Intelligence reports at least 6 more prison camps in this sector. SS troops are systematically executing captured paratroopers. Division wants you to coordinate additional rescue operations. The weight of command settles heavier on McNiece's shoulders. Success breeds responsibility, and responsibility breeds impossible choices. How many more barns? How many more desperate assaults with improvised weapons and scrounged explosives? I'll need more men, sir. And more ammunition. Already authorized, the captain says. Plus you're getting official recognition for these actions. Word is division is putting you in for the Silver Star. McNiece stares across the Norman countryside, where morning mist rises from flooded fields and broken hedgerows. Somewhere out there, more captured paratroopers wait in makeshift prisons, facing execution at dawn. The Winchester feels warm in his hands, metal heated by repeated firing. "Sir, about that medal. Can we talk about it after we get our people home?" 3 weeks later, in a field hospital near Carrington, McNiece sits on a supply crate while a medic treats shrapnel wounds in his left shoulder. The Winchester leans against the tent wall, its stock scarred by bullet impacts from the 4th rescue mission. Around him, wounded paratroopers recover from injuries sustained in operations that will never appear in any official reports. "Tell me again about the barn raids," says Captain Ellis, the intelligence officer taking depositions for after-action reports. "Division wants details for the citation." McNiece stares at his hands, noting how they shake slightly when he's not holding a weapon. "Which one?" They all start to blur together after a while. "The first one, June 8th, where you assaulted 12 SS troops with a shotgun. It wasn't heroic," McNiece says quietly. "I was scared out of my mind. Thought I was going to die in that farmyard." Ellis looks up from his notepad, surprised by the admission. "But you did it anyway." "Didn't have a choice. My men were about to be executed." "The report says you single-handedly eliminated an entire SS detachment and rescued 4 prisoners." McNiece laughs bitterly. "The report doesn't say I nearly threw up from fear before going over that wall. Doesn't say I closed my eyes when I pulled the trigger the first time. Doesn't say I got lucky that their machine gunner jammed his weapon. The medic finishes with the bandage and moves to the next patient. McNiece flexes his shoulder, testing the range of motion. The wound will heal, but something deeper feels permanently damaged. A reserve of nervous energy that kept him moving through impossible situations. "Sergeant," Ellis continues, "you've rescued 47 paratroopers in 4 separate operations. That's extraordinary by any measure. And how many didn't make it?" McNiece asks. "Henderson and Martinez from the first barn, Kowalski and Davis from the 3rd operation. Peters died of his wounds 2 days after we pulled him out. You want to put that in your report too?" The tent falls quiet, except for the distant rumble of artillery and the soft conversations of wounded men. Ellis closes his notepad, studying McNiece with something approaching understanding. "The citation doesn't have to include everything," the captain says. "Sometimes it's enough to record the essential facts." "Essential facts," McNiece repeats. "Like how I disobeyed direct orders to blow the bridge because I decided rescue missions were more important. How I used improvised explosives and stolen weapons because proper channels couldn't supply what we needed. Like how 47 men are alive because you improvised solutions when conventional tactics failed." McNiece picks up the Winchester, checking the action automatically. The shotgun has become an extension of his nervous system, metal and wood, that responds to his thoughts before he's conscious of making decisions. But the weapon feels heavier now, weighted with memories of close-quarters fighting and the faces of men who didn't make it home. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When this war ends, when they write the histories and print the citations, what do you think they'll say about the Filthy 13? About paratroopers who fought with stolen weapons and improvised tactics?" Ellis considers the question, glancing around the field hospital at wounded men whose stories will be condensed into unit histories and casualty reports. "They'll say you did your job under impossible conditions. They'll say you brought your men home. And the parts they don't say, the fear, the mistakes, the men we couldn't save, those parts stay with us," Ellis says quietly. "Those parts we carry ourselves." Outside the tent, Norman rain begins to fall, pattering against canvas and pooling in the muddy pathways between medical stations. McNiece listens to the sound, remembering how rain felt different in the drainage ditches during those long approaches to enemy positions. Sharper, colder, more immediate. "There's one more thing about that first barn," McNiece says. "Something I never told anybody." Ellis reopens his notepad. "What's that?" "When I went over that wall, when I started running across open ground, I wasn't thinking about tactics or rescue operations. I was thinking about my little brother back in Oklahoma, how he used to get picked on by older kids, how I'd promised to protect him and then fail when it mattered. And I decided I was done failing people who depended on me, even if it killed me." 40 years later, Jake McNiece sits in his Oklahoma kitchen, turning a dented shotgun shell over in his weathered fingers. The Winchester 1897 hangs above the mantelpiece, its steel surfaces reflecting lamplight like distant muzzle flashes. Through the window, autumn rain falls on farmland that resembles Norman bocage, just enough to trigger memories. His grandson, Tommy, home from college with a history assignment about World War II, leans forward across the kitchen table. "Grandpa, the citation just says you displayed exceptional heroism in rescuing captured personnel. Doesn't give any details." McNiece sets down the shell, studying the boy who bears his late son's features and his own stubborn chin. "What details do you want?" "Everything. What it was really like. How you decided to disobey orders and go after those prisoners." "Who says I disobeyed orders?" "Come on, Grandpa. I read enough military history to know when something doesn't add up. You were supposed to blow a bridge, but instead you spent 3 weeks conducting unauthorized rescue operations." McNiece stands and walks to the window, watching rain puddle in the barnyard. Sometimes the sound of water against glass brings back the weight of that shotgun, the cold metal that became an extension of his determination during those impossible dawn assaults. The bridge mission didn't matter in the end, he says. German armor went a different way. But 47 paratroopers came home who wouldn't have otherwise. How do you live with making those kinds of choices? McNiece turns back to his grandson, seeing something of his younger self in the boy's earnest expression. You don't live with them exactly. They live with you. Every morning when you wake up, every time you hear a car backfire or see muzzle flashes in a war movie. You carry the weight of what you chose to do and who you chose to save. Do you regret it? I regret every man we couldn't reach in time. I regret Henderson and Martinez and the others who died in those barns before we could get to them, but I don't regret trying. Tommy glances at the Winchester above the fireplace. What about the shotgun? Why keep it all these years? Because it reminds me that sometimes the best solution isn't the official solution. Sometimes you have to improvise with what you have and trust your instincts over your orders. The citation calls you a hero. McNiece laughs, but there's no humor in it. Heroes are what they call men who survive impossible situations. The real heroes are the ones who didn't make it home to explain what actually happened. Outside, thunder rolls across Oklahoma farmland, and for a moment McNiece is back in Norman hedgerows, counting German sentries and calculating approach routes through flooded fields. The weight of command, the mathematics of survival, the terrible arithmetic of choosing which rules to break and which men to save. Grandpa, yeah? When I finish this assignment, when I write about what you did over there, what's the most important thing to remember? McNiece considers the question, touching the faded scar on his left shoulder where German shrapnel bit deep during the 4th rescue operation. On quiet nights, the old wound still aches with approaching weather changes, a permanent reminder of choices made under fire. Remember that every citation, every medal, every story they tell about the war is just the surface layer. Underneath, there's always a scared young man making the best decision he can with incomplete information and too little time. And that's enough? Sometimes that's everything. McNiece returns to the kitchen table, picking up the shotgun shell again. The brass casing has worn smooth from decades of handling, but he can still feel the ghost impression of the Winchester's action, the satisfying weight of a weapon that never failed when everything else did. Tommy, when you write that report, don't make it about heroism or glory. Make it about young men far from home, trying to bring their friends back alive. Make it about the choices we make when no one else can make them for us. Thunder rumbles again, closer now, and McNiece closes his eyes to listen. Somewhere in that sound, he hears echoes of German voices across Norman farmyards, the mechanical rhythm of the Winchester's action, and the grateful whispers of rescued men stumbling through hedgerows toward Allied lines. The stories they tell about the Filthy 13 get bigger every year, more dramatic with each retelling. But the weight of those 18 days in Norman Bocage remains exactly what it was, the mass of decisions made in darkness, carried forward into whatever light comes after. If this story reminded you that behind every medal and mission report there's a human being carrying memories we'll never fully see, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to revisit history with us in the next story.